Dispensational methodology. What is dispensational methodology? Why is it dangerous? And how do you recognize a pastor or Bible teacher who interprets Scripture with a dispensational mindset? I've heard many pastors preach against dispensational soteriology, yet they interpret Scripture using dispensational methodology. So what's up? Let me begin by answering the first question. What is dispensational methodology? Dispensational methodology starts with a set of rules or presuppositions that it presumes are true. Then it filters all Scripture through those lenses. For example, classic dispensational interpretive methodology begins with the presupposition that there are multiple historic dispensations, or periods in time when salvation is by different methods, and not always by faith and faith alone. It starts with the presupposition that there are two distinct peoples of God, based on genetics, and God deals with them differently regarding salvation. Classic dispensational interpretive methodology also begins with the presupposition that a pre-tribulation rapture is true, and that there is a great gap of time between Daniel's 69th and 70th week, and there will be a future temple rebuilt in Jerusalem, sometime before Christ returns. And dispensational interpretive methodology presumes that Antichrist is a thing of the distant future, something that occurs after their great gap between Daniel's 69th and 70th week. There are, of course, many more rules or presuppositions that classic dispensational interpretive methodology starts with, but these are sufficient for our present conversation. It should be duly noted that students and pastors raised up with a dispensational philosophical approach to the Bible are taught the tenets of dispensational interpretive methodology before they even open the Bible. And when they do open the Bible, they use it to prove their presupposed doctrines and rules are true. Thus, they do not draw their meaning from Scripture first. Rather, they impose predetermined dispensational values and ideas on the texts that they claim to interpret. In other words, they put the cart before the horse. Prominent 20th century advocate of dispensationalism, Professor John Walvoord, confirmed this when he stated that dispensationalism was not a theology, rather a method of Bible interpretation. The next question I raised was, why is it dangerous? Dispensational methodology is dangerous because it does not teach its doctrine by exegeting Scripture in context and respecting the rules of grammar. Rather, it only respects context when context supports its predetermined methodology. And it only respects grammar when the grammar of the text confirms what its presupposed doctrines teach. You will notice that pastors and Bible teachers predisposed to dispensational interpretive methodology hop around the Scripture like a Jehovah's Witness on steroids. Let me give you an example of how they allow their dispensationalism to affect their reading of Scripture. When dispensationalists read Matthew 24 verses 1 through 15, they completely deny the context and the grammar of the text. So instead of accepting the plain contextual reading of the text that states that Jesus is addressing his disciples and telling them that they will see the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, dispensationalists ignore these plain facts of context and grammar, and many just skip over these verses and paraphrase them to avoid appearing ignorant or being accused of rewriting Scripture or twisting it to suit their presupposed doctrines. Now here's the interesting thing. I've heard many pastors and Bible teachers declare dispensationalism false, yet apply this very dispensational methodology to Matthew 24, verses 1 through 15. Why do they do this? They do this because philosophically they are dispensationalists, despite the fact that they deny certain tenets and presupposed doctrines and rules of dispensationalism. In fact, they should be correctly identified as partial dispensationalists, many of which arrived at their homespun version of dispensationalism through rejection of a pre-tribulation rapture and dual covenant theology. In this regard, the light went on. They realized that Irving, Darby, Schofield, Larkin, and Walvoord had it wrong, and so they corrected those aspects of their dispensationalism without ever addressing the core problem of interpretive methodology. That they hung on to. You must ask, why do these soft dispensationalists, if you like, not flat out reject the dispensational interpretive philosophy and methodology along with the doctrinal errors that they've identified? There are several reasons that they continue to apply the faulty dispensational interpretive method. They are: number one, they don't realize that the doctrines they have rejected came about because of dispensational methodology, so they see no problem with their method.